the most unethical thing you've done IRL? Story 1. Some guy at work undid the quick release on my bicycle's wheels, and I didn't realize they were loose until I went down a curb and the front wheel rattled, nearly came off. The next day I confronted my colleagues about it, but nobody fessed. Later that day the saddle went missing, but I found it on a shelf near the tools. That night, I used epoxy resin to affix box cutter blades to the underside of all the quick releases on the bike, all of them. The next day one of the guys at work cut his hand up real bad and got sacked for dicking around with my property. Story 2. I sold cars for 2 months. If that wasn't unethical enough, in and of itself, since Plenty of Fish uses car ownership as a possible search criteria, I used the app to try to contact women in need of a motor vehicle so I could sell them a car. Story 3. Many years back management called us all to head office to tell us they were closing our office and were making us all redundant but expected us to work out notice or would be fired with no reference. The other offices weren't being touched. All my colleagues were having a shouting match with the MD, so I snuck out to the fire escape and went down to the sales floor, found an unlocked PC and burned 2 copies of the firm's entire sales database a few minutes apart. Exactly as I suspected, some sneery little from a safe office who had been tasked with keeping an eye on us came up to me a few days later and said, "We know that 2 copies of the sales database were made, and we know you got one of them because you have the know-how and well find who took the other one." And he said if I didn't hand it over I'd be fired on the spot. So I opened my briefcase and gave him the CD with it on, and no more was said. They never found who burned the other copy, and I sold it a couple of months later to another colleague who started her own company with it after I was offered a job in a different industry. Edit to thank you, kind stranger, for the gold. I'm buzzed to know I'm still profiting from my crime. Story 4. I once counterfeited 360 several years ago. I was studying to receive a degree in graphic design at a college that will go unnamed. As a graphic design student, nearly all of my projects needed to be printed in some form or another. Black and white printers were available for free use throughout the campus, but each page that came out of a color printer would cost the student one, with specialty printers such as a large format machine being charged as 1 per square foot. To simplify the process of facilitating this transaction at the various printers around campus, it was possible for students to purchase 12 punch cards at the school bookstore. The student would send a print job to a color printer, where the job would be held until an arbiter librarian teacher, what have you, could punch the appropriate number of holes out of the student's card and release the job for printing. I bought one of these cards, and being the stingy and unscrupulous graphic design student that I was, saw no opportunity to apply my skills for convenience and profit. I scanned it and recreated it digitally, down to the exact stretching of the fonts and misalignment of the punch hole guides. It was all remarkably easy, given my training up to that point with design software, until I encountered a limit of my medium. There was one more security measure that the school used to guard against the exact thing I was doing. A stamped serial number was added to each card that used an ink pad with a vibrant red ink. Up until this point I had gotten lucky. The rest of the genuine card I used as my template was printed in black and white, meaning I could carry out my forgery entirely on the free, unmonitored grayscale printers the school provided. But even if I could get this to a color printer outside the school, the red used was much brighter than what could be believably reproduced with a typical CMYK printer. I had to get creative. Using the serial number of the card that had been purchased legitimately and scrambling the last 3 digits so the card would still be in the range of cards sold, but wouldn't immediately be traced back to me, I managed to slowly and painstakingly carve a square of linoleum into a perfect recreation of the size and font of the number stamp used by the bookstore. It could only ever produce the one serial number, but that would have to be enough. With that I printed 3 sheets of 10 cards and slipped them into my backpack. When I got home, I carefully cut and stamped them, being sure to slightly misalign the stamp a little differently each time. A mix of morality and cautiousness prevented me from ever attempting to sell these cards through a black market back channel to other students or ever use them on projects that were not required for my school assignments. I decided that it would be best to never carry more than 3 on me while at the school. The closest time I came to getting caught was when I had a 3x9 job for the large format printer. The technician who ran the machine was quick to point out that the job would cost much more if I purchased it from the school as opposed to taking it to a professional print shop. I was able to satisfy his curiosity by telling him the print was for a project with an urgent deadline, and that I was willing to pay more for the convenience. He shrugged as he punched out 2 complete cards and a few dollars on a third, all of them bearing the exact same serial number. Those 30 cards lasted me my entire education, and I managed to not tell another living soul until this post. Story 5. I put the hottest hot sauce I could find in my lunch that I brought to work to find out who had been stealing my food. I really didn't care about the food. I wanted my vintage Tupperware back, that still had a few thousand more uses in it. The food thief got fired and I only got one of my containers back. I had been throwing them away after eating my lunch. Story 6. When I was 19 and in the McDonald's drive-thru my friend and I ordered a water. It was pretty busy. Get to the front and the guy starts handing me someone else's order: Big Mac, 2 McChickens, fries and a couple drinks, so I played along and got a free meal. I was a young poor college student and high as a kite, but it was still really shitty. Story 7. Paintballing. I was 25 and went paintballing with my friend who was 23. It was his first time and my 5th or 6th. It was during the middle of a weekday and for some reason there were a fair amount of 8 to 12-year-old kids plus their parents. We get checked in and it's me, my friend, and 10 kids versus 8 kids and 4 parents. We're in a warehouse and I take charge setting up positions for the team. There was a main door connecting our side and a small staircase leading to the second floor which overlooks the enemy side of the warehouse. Knowing that they'd try to flank us upstairs, when the ref blew the whistle starting the match, I told all the kids to rush the main door. What I didn't tell them was that me and my friend would go up the stairs while they attacked. I sound the charge and it was horrible. It was like a child version of Saving Private Ryan. I don't know how they got to the main door first, but the first kid on my team to get up from behind cover took several paintballs to the face. The rest rush in and were quickly mowed down. However, I guess it was a good distraction since me and my friend got upstairs without being noticed. One kid on our side was still alive in the corner taking heavy fire. The enemy team concentrated on him, allowing us to get the drop on the enemy team. Me and my friend had a good time. The kids, not so much. Story 8 had an old high school buddy who was working under me. We became friends, but his performance was really terrible. I ended up firing him, but he was understanding and we decided to still remain friends. To make it up to him, I decided to be his wingman for this girl he had been talking about for a while. It sounded like it wasn't going well and I was going to help him lock it down. She and I have been married 6 years now. Story 9. Nothing crazy. Classmate in high school kept taking my Mountain Dew and drinking it when I wasn't looking. When I finally figured it out, I chugged half the bottle and threw some laxative in there. Then I went to use the restroom so the bottle was exposed. Story 10. When I was a sophomore in high school, I was walking to the school one morning when I witnessed a man slip and fall off his trailer onto his back. I chose to pretend not to see him and continued my way to the school. I was in athletics and had morning detention. If I missed, I felt, at the time, that it would cost me dearly, and I didn't want that happening. Story 11. This happened when I was around 12 or so. I was walking down the street and coming the other way was a blind guy with a cane and he was taking up most of the sidewalk, so I tried to do a bit of a jog jump around him, but that thing happened when something goes between your feet and you end up kicking it, so the dude's cane goes flying and okay, I can still redeem myself here, right? Well, I didn't, I just ran for some reason. I mean, I guess my logic is he couldn't see me anyway. Worst of all, I'm sure it looked to bystanders like I just kicked this dude cane away like a... Story 12. Many times when I was a kid and the original Bionicles Lego were still being sold, I would bring a pen and paper to the store, and write down all the codes shown on the outside of the boxes for all the Bionicles on the shelf. I'd then take the paper home, and redeem all the codes for my account on the Bionicle website, giving me free points and effectively rendering the codes for the whole store's inventory of Bionicles useless to anyone else wanting to buy one. Story 13. My little sister put soap on my toothbrush, so that night I put a little dab of toothpaste in her long curly hair. By the morning it was all over her pillow and had completely matted her hair. I kept doing it every night for a month until she broke down crying because she thought she was terrible at brushing her teeth. I've never told her it was me and I never will. Story 14. A guy at work messed with my machine to make me look bad. His machine used hot glue to stick labels on plastic bottles. Midway through the shift I dumped a thinning solution into the glue tank. The glue thinned out, made a huge mess, and had to be drained out and replaced. It took hours to clean and heat up new glue. Guy never figured out what happened. Story 15. When I was 13 my parents had a couple stay with us for a week or two. The wife had delusional episodes that involved wandering the house babbling. I was warned of this and told to just ignore it. Well, she did it a lot, and it always seemed to involve my room, late at night, and yelling. Pissed off me was in the shower one day, fuming about another intrusion, and sitting there in the shower stall was wifey's special dandruff shampoo, so I peed in it, shook it up lots and put it back. I'm not proud of my actions, but damn it, why didn't they get a hotel room? Story 16. I went to Meijer's earlier this year to do my grocery shopping, and while I was at it, I decided to splurge and grabbed a copy of Monster Hunter World. At some point during the shopping trip I pulled the hoodie I was wearing off, put it on top of the game, which had been sitting on the child's seat, and continued on with my shopping. Well, I get to the car, unload my groceries, and when I grabbed my hoodie, I realized I completely forgot to ring up the game. Now a responsible person would go back in the store and ring up the game, but dude, I just saved $60,000, so yeah, I wound up shoplifting a video game. Edit 1. Meijer is a supermarket based in Michigan, not a game store. To the case, the new games were stored and had been left open, and I didn't see any store employees in the area. This was also the first area if the store I stopped at. Story 17. I was at a bowling alley with some friends when I was around 10, and while dicking around I found out that a skee-ball machine's coin holder was unlocked. I played a couple free games, and then when no one was looking I just put the $2 to $3 worth of quarters in my pocket. I feel kinda bad for it because it is illegal, but the cops haven't knocked down my door yet, so I think I'm in the clear. Story 18. One time at the grocery store self-checkout, I put in the product code for bananas, which were 59 per pound, but actually bought apples priced at 99 per pound. Story 19. The whole job hunting process is pretty unethical, from both sides. I'll be exaggerating on the verge of flat-out lying about my skills and enthusiasm to work there, and I expect them to lie about the atmosphere, the overtime, the advancement opportunities, etc. Story 20. Probably this. Story 21. When I was in high school I was talking about a game I played with a friend. This guy in my class jumped into the conversation saying he played as well. I invited him over to play some hot seat versus each other and the computer. Turns out he wasn't as good as he said he was. Actually, he was quite terrible. After a few weeks of him coming over I had enough and tried to politely say that this would be our last game. He really didn't want to stop our weekly game night because he had no friends. I don't know why, but I told him the game was getting boring, but if we were to bet 20 a game it would make it interesting again. I didn't think he would agree, but he did. I played practically every week for the last 2 years of high school. I won every single game. FFS, I feel bad now. Story 22. In 6th grade my 3 friends and I were the cool girls, haven't been Seoul since. This one girl wanted to be friends with us so bad, but we didn't really like her. She wouldn't leave us alone, so I decided to tell her she could be our friend, but she'd have to change a little bit. I proceeded to make a 2-page list of all the things she would have to change about herself if she wanted to be our friend, like get contacts, cut her hair, or start wearing etnies. So cool at the time. She ended up showing her mom the list and we all got in trouble. She didn't come to school for a while. Never talked to her again. A couple of years later she and I ended up at the same soccer clinic. I had developed cystic acne and she got super hot, so I guess she won out in the end. Story 23. I used to work at a vet. My coworker was a royal and wouldn't feed the animals enough food, less cleanup, is what she said, and she wouldn't give them a bed. So they were essentially sleeping on steel or concrete with a mountain of blankets going unused. ID had enough. She would hide the vet cleaning supplies, and hid her coffee pot along with it. Like any of us were using it, we had the office pot, so one day I was alone in the building and decided to hunt everything down. I found her coffee pot, and left it, but first I hocked a big loogie in the water reservoir. I did this for months. It was so justifying seeing her drinking her coffee. And yes, I confronted her on the other issues, but she maintained how in the right she was. I'd just go after she left and properly feed and care for the animals. Story 24. When I got my wisdom teeth out my mom took me to Wendy's after, and asked me what flavor of Frosty I wanted, and I said near flavor, don't remember it, but yeah, that happened apparently. Story 25. Driving to college with some friends a few years back. Pulled up next to a hearse at the traffic light. Pulled down the windows and cranked up the volume, blasting Highway 2. A bit thoughtless looking back at it. A few years ago, I played RuneScape, and I wanted a really cool skin. Well, you could take surveys and such to earn a secondary currency and buy the skin with that. So, I created a fake email, and zoomed in on a random house in Utah. A lot of the surveys offer magazines and free samples and such at the end. So some guy sitting in Utah somewhere has piles and piles of health magazines and baby wipe samples on his doorstep, with probably more coming every day, all addressed to a beautiful human being by the name of Flarg Blarg. Story 26. So my mom had some friends and their kids were just as bad. They convinced me to steal from a corner shop. They went in and asked about a fake brand of dog food, and the clerk left the till and helped them look for it. I grabbed an entire box of Pokemon card packs and walked out. Like 50 to 100 packs or something. I got a shiny Charizard. Also grabbed a bag of Skittles. Story 27. So I was managing a cafe in an office building that also had a doctor's office. We had this one doctor that would like to remind me every day that she came in that she was a vegetarian and kept kosher. Clearly this was not a kosher kitchen. She was always busy, and had the habit of jumping the line to ask questions, delaying other people because of her perceived importance. So she wasn't one of my favorite people to deal with, couldn't use the same knife to cut her sandwich as someone's that touched meat, etc. So one day while I was making sandwiches for a line of guests, she stopped me to ask if the corn chowder was okay for her to eat. Without thinking about it I said yes and moved on. A couple of hours later it dawned on me that I had rendered some bacon while sautéing the onions for the chowder, clearly not vegetarian and definitely not kosher. The next day she came in to tell me how much she loved the chowder. I felt bad but not enough to tell her because she was a huge pain in the... Story 28. When I was 17 I found out that one of my foster brothers would wait till I was sleeping and then kiss me and stare at me while I was unaware. After I found out, I pretended to be asleep, waited until he got close and then decked him in the face. He has Down syndrome. When I find out he was doing it I was disgusted and angry and didn't care what his mental capacity was. I just wanted to make sure that he never did that again. Story 29. Not me but a friend of mine. Her job can't keep change, but a lot of customers would run off before she could let them know and give their change back. Because of that, she pockets any change left by customers. Story 30. My friend and I hacked and lured a whole bunch of RuneScape accounts to sell gold for real money. One day his account got hacked via keylogger, but managed to recover it before losing anything. Later on I hacked his account and took the stuff and told him to virus scan the computer again. Turns out he actually had multiple Trojans due to his younger brother messing on the internet. This was in 2010. They soon busted us for RWT and handed out permanent bans. Gilanor became a better place that day. Story 31. Back when I was an impatient teenager and worked fast food I served some Hindu people bean burritos that had lard in them after they had specifically asked if the bean burritos were vegetarian. Honestly though, I thought they were. Whoops. Story 32. I may or may not have put laxatives into a bottle of pop to see if anyone was taking it from me during parties, and may or may not have given some to a friend to test the strength. Story 33. Today when I bought zip ties and AA batteries, the cashier chick didn't scan the batteries. I noticed but I looked at her, the screen, and back at her. She looked back smiling and I just walked off. Story 34. Maybe not that unethical, but I felt pretty bad at the time. I was at the bar and started chatting with a really cute girl by the pool tables. Sadly, it turned out she had a boyfriend, but because she took a liking to me, she said she'd introduce me to her cute friend Beth. She said that I'd really like Beth. I said sure, introduce me to Beth. So we walk around to the bar area, and I realize who Beth was, a 300-pound massive woman sitting at the bar, literally taking up 2 chairs. I got out of there in milliseconds, disappeared right as the other girl was tapping Beth in the shoulder. They never even saw me leave. They must have turned around and looked with confusion at the empty space that I had left behind. I felt bad because what I did was rude, but in all fairness the other girl was also misleading, since I had already expressed interest in her, and since she looked nothing like Beth, she should have guessed I would not be interested in Beth. Story 35 didn't offer to donate a lung. It was her only option to stay alive, in the same blood type, and her brother. Don't know how tissue matches work, but 14-year-old me never found out. Nobody asked me to, but I never offered either. Story 36 I've done some little things like steal some candy from a store or a pack of locker magnets, but there are two things that I did half my life ago that still haunt me. One, my friend's parents went to the store one day and left their back door on their car open and had two 12-packs of soda. My friend and I stole them. I can't drink Dr. Pepper even still today because it makes me so ashamed. Two, I jumped in on bullying this kid with two other kids once in gym class. Our lockers had combo locks built into them, so every time the locker would shut it would lock automatically. This kid was a fat kid like I was, and the two other kids were slapping him in the belly, and I was slamming his locker shut every time he'd open it. He was in tears. He eventually went to the teacher and I ended up getting in school suspension for it. Only time I ever had that in my entire school career. I was a pretty good kid, other than these two incidents, but the shame really haunts me and will eat at me forever until I die because there's no way to go back and make it right now. Story 37 was about to be phased out of a job where I was basically management at an airport. The company made me train my replacement, cut my hours so I wouldn't get benefits when my 1-year mark came up, and took me off my usual duties to make wait tables. Around the same time they changed their policy about the military discount, and it would no longer include alcoholic drinks or adult menu items, so you have these guys heading off to their next deployment, only God knows where, possibly into contact. The company would only apply their military discount to the children's menu and soda or water. So since my 2 weeks was already in, and I already had a new job lined up, was actually going to be leaving for BCT myself in a few months. Although that didn't pan out, I made sure I was the one waiting for the men and women in uniform, and I would ring up their meal, no matter what it was, as a kids menu version. If they ordered a bottled beer, I was free to bring that to them myself, but if they ordered mixed drinks I would have my favorite bartender, who was also about to quit, not that the company knew it, make their drinks, always using a fresh bottle, since the ones on the back of the bar almost always had fruit flies by the hundreds in them. Unethical, only if you are my former employers who me out of health benefits right when Obamacare was kicking in. Story 38 I used to play a game called Ultimo Online when it was one of the most popular MMOs. Well, during this time a few weeks after player housing was patched, I discovered an interesting trick when reading the deed to a house. It didn't really matter where your character was on the screen as long as you could click the house sign to open the menu. So at least once a week Idaho place the cheapest home you could buy out in front of a castle, if then proceed to advertise the sale of a fully furnished castle for a very nice price. ID find a buyer, and wed travel to the castle steps to make the sale. ID click not on the castle sign, but my crappy 20,000 gold hut and proceed to sell the castle for a couple million gold and teleport away before the poor dope knew what happened. I earned so much gold during the next few weeks that I could buy anything I wanted and the game just got boring and I quit. I can still imagine the rage those players must have felt when they realized they've lost not only months' worth of farming gold, but in most cases months' worth of farming their entire guild's gold that they worked hard for to buy a castle. My 14-year-old self never felt such a rush when those trades would complete. Edit corrected a lot of what my phone auto-corrected stupid phones. Story 39 When I was in high school I ended up living with my dad and his roommate which was also a good friend of his. After a while my dad's roommate started not like the idea of me living there and was in. When I finally learned my dad and I were moving, I poured my probably 2-month-old bong water underneath his roommate's mattress. I feel kinda like about it now but fuck it, dude was a LOL. Story 40 Know me, but funny, I did a Kontiki tour a few years back that hit the major tourist spots. Anyone who has done such a tour will know that all the tour companies tend to run similar tours and often go to the same places, so you can run into the same tour group a few times. There was a guy from a different group that we ran into in Italy who was a massive. All the Kontiki groups had a big party together, and whenever someone went to the bar and bought 2 beers to save waiting in line twice he would pinch their second one. Last day of the tour, as we're cruising back towards home, we played a game of Kontiki confessions on the bus where everyone took turns to get on the microphone and fess up to something. One of the boys hopped up and confessed that he got sick of the guy stealing his beers so he bought one, drank some, and then he and 3 of the other boys each rubbed the mouth of the bottle in their sweaty groins and peed into it a little. Sure enough, stole it and drank it. Whole bus cheered, and then one of the co-pissers piped up and then Amy girl in our tour group who was a massive pitta kissed him. Story 41 Watch my boss die at age 37 of a massive coronary right in front of me. It's just me in the department so I end up helping get my very good friend hired on very short notice. We rock our department for several months just us. I then get hired as boss, now need to hire a replacement for me to work with my friend. Other employee has adopted son who is trying to turn his life around and this is just the job to get him back on the path. We hire him, turns out he's bipolar, abusive, racist or something, spend the next 6 months trying to help my friend work with the guy, but he is only psycho and abusive around him. My friend ends up on stress meds because of this idiot. Psychotic abusive incident occurs again. My friend tells me, I have had enough. I write up the incident as a student who witnessed it and have BFF of mine send it via anonymous email to HR. President gets wind of what happened. He is fired that weekend and we have never looked back, nor do I feel the most remote bit of remorse. My friend was off the meds within a few weeks and our place of work is much the better for it. Story 42. I rented a movie and wanted to keep it. So I opened the VHS cassette up and transferred it to a blank one I had and out the blank tape into the movie one, returned the original with the blank inside it and claimed it was blank to begin with, got a refund, still feel bad. Story 43. My food was stolen from the communal fridge, eaten and then the container put back. I was livid. I asked for the tapes. Nothing was done. Happened a second time. Now someone needed to pay. Seemed like they knew my lunch bag. I bought fridge togo and kept my real lunch at my desk, kept a decoy lunch with a known bag in the fridge. I had put liberal amounts of Visine in. I checked at the end of the week, food and bag were a no-show. Hope they learned their lesson, asswipe. Story 44. My coworkers and I would regularly steal from the frozen yogurt store we worked at. We were all college students, even the managers, and the owner was a huge. He would keep the tips that people left us and never gave them back in our paychecks, so we stopped reporting most of tips. It was a self-serving store and someone figured out how to clear the order after weighing so that it looked like a legit person. We would give away free yogurt to our friends and take for ourselves. We also had a rewards program in that store that would give you cash for every certain amount of money spent. Most of the time customers wouldn't ask to input the points, so I would input my own number. Story 45. The USPS delivered a package that was supposed to be one street over. I could have brought it over and made a great friend who would have been happy with my good deed. Maybe he would have even rewarded me. Instead, I opened the package, 6 pounds of weed, paid for school. I also got pretty high. Story 46. When I was 5 I ate a donut before getting to the cash register. My mum turned to get it for me to see a sugar-covered face with an empty paper bag. Sorry for the embarrassment, Mum. Story 47. When I was about 10, a cereal brand, can't recall which one, was providing invisible ink pens in each box of their cereal. My mum never bought cereal for us, so these cool invisible ink pens seemed like an impossible item to get until one day when I was walking past an open classroom during recess, and noticed one of these pens on the closest desk. I looked both ways, then quickly ran in and stole said pen, and stuffed it in my backpack. The perfect crime, I thought, until an emergency meeting was called by the principal. Apparently one of the second graders' special pens had been stolen, and the 8-year-old, heavily autistic girl was completely beside herself with its disappearance. The principal would be conducting bag searches of every student in the school. Was only about 200 students in the place after lunch, but until then, the pen could be put in her mailbox with no questions asked. I of course smelled a rat, and went and hid the pen in the boys' toilets. Bag was searched and obviously nothing found, and the culprit seemed to have got away with it, except the culprit felt so horrible about what he had done, that he stayed up all night long crying to his mum about what a horrible person he was and confessing to everything. After grounding me for a week, she told me to go in during recess the next day and place the pen back, which I did. She never mentioned it again, and I didn't mention it to anyone either. Also remains the one and only time I've stolen something intentionally, just in case the item belongs to an autistic 8-year-old girl. Story 48. When I was in elementary school, a friend of mine asked if she could use my homework pass because she forgot hers. I was saving up my homework passes and was upset that I would have to cover her. She was super forgetful and constantly forgot her homework. I decided I would save her this time, but I wanted cash. I asked her for, let's say, 5. Being the forgetful kid she was, she kept forgetting to bring in my money. Eventually, I got frustrated. I asked for interest for the money. As an aside, I just knew I wanted to raise the total because she was taking forever. I didn't know what interest was or ask for it by name. Raised it to 6. Due to months of forgetfulness, the money owed eventually doubled. My friend soon got caught stealing from her mom's purse and confessed to why she wanted the money. This resulted in a call to my parents and one of the most serious punishments. Looking back, I can laugh when I think of myself as a young loan shark, but I felt incredibly guilty right after it happened. Story 49. Not a throwaway. Years ago, me and some friends were drinking in a shared backyard in a downtown city. A couple female neighbors came back from a local bar running their mouths before heading back out to another bar in the area. A friend said we should do something to them for kind of killing our mood. I blurted out that I would on their grill. Before I knew it, they were egging me on and followed me into the bathroom with a paper plate. One friend held it as I squatted over the toilet, pinching my tip and forcing a few nugs out while everyone was hooping and hollering in the doorway watching. Friend ran out and put mine in their grill while I cleaned up. That night I learned 2 things. I would do anything to make people laugh without putting thought into my actions, and that needed to stop and pointed out by my friends. The backside of my are really dark in color. For our AP statistics exam, our entire class loaded a program onto our calculators that contained every equation, every explanation, etc. You had to leave your cell phones in your bag, but the proctors never checked or thought to check the calculators. To be honest though, I felt guilty and got scared, so I didn't look at the program during the exam. Ended up getting an earned 4, but I still feel guilty for even having the intent to cheat. Story 50. Worked in a pub for a few years. Used to watch the fruit machine, if it was due a payout. When the pub was empty or when I was closing down, I'd use money from the till to win jackpot. I'd pay what I'd taken back into the till and keep the profit. Unethical but with no regrets. Stupid drunk people. Story 51. I worked for a company that offered tuition reimbursement. You would have to fill out a form at the start of the semester, and then at the end, submit a form requesting payment along with receipts for books, tuition, as well as grades all on school letterhead. I submitted the paperwork the first time and they rejected it saying it wasn't on proper letterhead or some bullshit, so I created my own letterhead, painstakingly recreated it and making it look extremely good. They accepted that. I created a fake bookstore receipt, tuition receipt, and grade report. I used this every semester for years even if I didn't pass my classes or actually take the classes. They had it capped so it basically covered 4 classes per year, or half-time. My fakes were so good that other people at work asked for them so they could use them after their real docs were rejected. Mine always worked.